We've been trying to digest what happened in that game against the Packers. We played a cut from actually Chris Long was on some podcast, and he was like, man, they're the weirdest team in the league. I can't figure them out. Do you think they're this team after this game? Then they come out with this performance and they do this. And is that how you kind of view the Seahawks from the outside, is that you don't really know what you're getting each week?
Yeah, I think there's some of that that happens. I think the other thing is I think they are kind of right where they are. Like, listen, man, they do a good job of handling the teams that aren't as good as them, but they're not in the class of Philadelphia. They're not in the class of Green Bay. They're probably not in the class of Minnesota. They're probably not in that upper echelon. They're the next notch below. And I said it, and I hate to tell you guys this because it's honest, but you know me, I'm just going to be honest.
We don't want you to lie to us, Big Mark.
Right. I said 3 weeks ago the Rams are going to come back and win this division. And, I just think that they're better quarterback. I think they're built a little bit better. And it's really interesting because they built themselves a couple of years ago when San Francisco went 9-2 against them since 2019 up until this year. And the Rams beat them twice. But it was really one of those things that started taking transformation last year. It started being this transformation last year. They looked at their group up front, their offensive and defensive lines, and they said, if we're going to compete with San Francisco, which we haven't been able to, we've got to get better running the ball. We got to get better, more physical up front on both sides of the line of scrimmage, and they've done that. And now I know San Francisco was beat up this year, but they controlled those lines of scrimmage in these two games that they played.
Hey, Mark, when you look at the Seahawks offensive line and just their offense in general, like it's been kind of helter-skelter. Like sometimes it is working, sometimes it's not. They've had a couple games where they've run the ball well, other games where it's been reliant on the passing game. When you think about the responsibility of the offense being successful, how would you break it down between the philosophy, the actual guys actually out there making the plays, and then the types of plays that the offensive coordinator has designed in its calling?
Yeah, interesting question, because I always think that, one, you've got to really understand what your guys can and can't do. And, it's really interesting. And I haven't, Ray, I haven't studied them, to be completely honest. I haven't done one of their games. So I haven't sat there and dug through 3 game tapes, and all that kind of stuff. But, I'm a big believer in knowing what you do well. And I've had the opportunity to consult with several different teams around the NFL just in the run game. And one of the first things I always tell people is identity is really important to me, like knowing what you do. And, that to me is one of those situations where it becomes the 10,000-hour rule. I've done this 10,000 times. You've defended it 200 times. I'm better than you. I'm going to kick your ass. And so I'm a believer in keeping it simple and having just a few things that you do exceptionally well. And, a lot of times I'll talk to a team and say, find one thing you do well, and then let's do that. And then I'm a big believer in making a defense play a scheme and then having adjunct kind of plays off that scheme. So if I'm on the backside of tight zone, man, my footwork, my hand placement, everything is identical, and I make you play that scheme over and over, and we cut back inside there, and we're getting 4 yards and 6 yards and 7 yards, and all of a sudden we've done it enough, and now you as a defensive lineman are going to try to cross my face or squeeze me down in the A-gap, and I run that same exact footwork, and then what we had, power, and that front side deuce block looks identical to that backside cutoff block, and now all of a sudden I whip you around, and we take you 4 gaps out of where you're supposed to be, and you could drive a Mack truck through the hole. And so then it becomes one of those situations where you're saying, hey, man, this is what we do. Unfortunately in the league, and there's a lot of this, and I talk to coaches every week, there's a lot of scheme run game plan. And what I mean by that is each week you show, hey, this is what this team struggles with, right? They struggle with this play. They struggle with the wide zone. They struggle with trap. They struggle with this. And then you implement or put all those things in your game plan. And I hate this because you know what? then all of a sudden you're running plays that aren't your plays. And you don't know the nuance of those plays. And you know when you find out the nuance of those plays? When you screw something up because you haven't seen it and you get your ass kicked for a 5-yard loss and it costs you the game. That's when you learn it. And so sometimes there's a lot of teams that will do this. One week they'll look great and you're like, oh my God, they figured it out. The next week the schemes completely change and you lose the nuance and then you look terrible. And so I don't know. I haven't studied them enough to know if that's something they do, but that stuff drives me crazy.
Hey, Mark, in your opinion, just watching all the games you do, calling the action, how many really good to great O-lines are there in this league? I feel like people will prop up the Lions as sort of the standard these days. Back in the day, it used to be the Cowboys. But how many, in your opinion, you think that is a solid to really, really good O-line in this league?
I would say, Philly, Detroit, but there's almost a loaded portion to that question. Because if you want to be a really good offensive line, you got to have a really good play caller. And so you can take a group that maybe not the most talented group, as long as they play together, but you have a play caller that understands our problems, right? And so ultimately, if you've got a play caller that calls plays that allow me to take the passive out of pass protection, the passive out of what we're doing, and be the aggressor, then we can be really, really good, even if we're not collectively the most talented group. And so there's a trick. Everybody just thinks you line up and kick people's ass, right? And that would be great. But again, Ray will tell you, man, it's the most skilled position in football. It is 100%. And I know you giggle, Bob, but
that's Ray giggling.
I was giggling because I love hearing it. Like I love that we validate each other in that sense.
Right. I always tell people this, man. We could get together, Bob. We could get together in the studio there. And we could have a game of catch, right? We could throw the football back and forth and actually look fairly skilled doing it. If a one-on-one drill broke out, I would whip your ass because I have a skill that has been developed over decades of playing this game. That is, it's just not a natural skill.
Exactly.
And I'm telling you, every time I line up, the guy across from me is the same size and close to the same strength. I'm stronger, of course. But that guy is more gifted athletically than me. And I have to win 100% of the battles.
Yep. And
and I know we've talked about this before, but there is not one other sport where two unlike athletes match up against one another, and the guy who's the worst athlete is supposed to win 100% of the battles, and if he doesn't, he sucks.
Oh, my God.
You can't name another one. There isn't any other one.
Yeah, I love when you make that argument, Mark, because I say it all the time. Like, it's the most misunderstood position in all of sports because most people don't know what they're looking at, and they think it's just whoever the strongest dude is going to win. And it is so much more than that.
Dude, it is like we are a secret mushroom society, and only the guys in the O-line room and the O-line coach knows what the hell we're doing. The head coach has no clue what we're doing. It is so funny. Like, nobody knows what we're doing except us. And I'm telling you, if you make a hire as a head coach, the most important hire you make is not the offensive coordinator, that's not the D coordinator. It's not the most important hire you will make on your staff is your O-line coach. If your O-line isn't the backbone of your football team is not good. Period. Stop. The end.
Hey, well, speaking of like that, like here in Seattle, over the years we've had a challenge of the guards in a guard spot, like really finding players that can kind of sit in there and be long-term answers to that. Do you think that is a product of just an underdevelopment of players, or do you think it's the undervaluing of those three positions in the league?
Yeah, you know what? Probably a little bit of both, to be honest with you. But I'm watching Damian Lewis film right now in Carolina. That dude is kicking ass.
Well, shoot.
He is coming off.
Don't tell us that, Mark. Like, that's the guy we just had here last year.
Well, why? That's coaching then, right?
Yeah.
Right. His footwork, his explosion, like he has played unbelievable football. Like really, really like rewindable moments in every tape I watch. I did a game of theirs that they went into overtime with Tampa Bay a couple of weeks ago, so I watched, 3 games of that. Now I'm back on Carolina this week against Arizona, and I'm watching them right now, and I've got notes, up the kazoo about how good how good they are in their inside 3 guys. And like that to me is like, are you allowing that guy to do what he does best? And, it's always interesting to me because at the end of my career, man, I could still really run block and like I could pass pro too. That wasn't an issue, but I could really run block in the zone game.
Mm-hmm.
That was what I was really good at taking the line of scrimmage and taking it to the second level, and always could do that. I could no longer pull, man. I could not put my foot in the ground and turn up. I was worthless when it came to pulling. But you know what? I was really good at that other aspect of the game. So you know what we did? We didn't run anything. We didn't run any power to the right side. We didn't run any counter to the right side because I was left guard.
Yeah.
We said, you know what? We're just going to scrap pile it because Mike Shanahan was like, he is so good at running the wide zone, the tight zone, the pitch and the toss and all that stuff that we ran, 18-19 Wanda, 18-19 handoff force, 19 this, 19, like he's so good at that stuff that we're just going to live in that realm. And if we want to run power, we're going to run it to the other side.
I feel you.
Be done.
I'll just tell you this. I'm right now, I could probably go to the weight room and bench like 400 pounds. Like just listening to Mark
he's got you inspired.
Oh, dude, I'm like the hair on my arms are like nobody better challenge me on Twitter tonight because I have time for it. I'm gonna give you all the Mark Schlereth social media fun tonight because he got me so excited about it. But when you
you know what you tweet out there, right? You just tweet out, "Come get a taste. I'm feeling it tonight, boys."
When you go around the league and you're consulting with these different teams, is there anything new or different or a different emphasis that they're teaching in offensive line play than like say when you and I played?
No, but I think one of the things, Ray, that's really happened is because the passing game has become so prevalent.
Mm-hmm.
That philosophically a lot of teams they look for an excuse not to run the ball. So I had one head coach that I consulted for that was like, hey, listen, man, I really want you to look at our film, and come in and do this, right? So I spent a bunch of time looking at his film, and so we get together and he says to me, all right, the reason I have you here is because I really want to really focus on the wide zone. I really want to run the ball better. And I said, do you? And he goes, yeah. That's why I brought you. That's why I have you here, and that's why we're having this conversation because we really want to focus on the wide zone of the run game. I go, but do you really? And he said, yeah. I wouldn't yes. This is what I want. I go, really? Do you really want that?
He's like, yes, Mark. Yes.
Right. And he's like, what do you like? Now he's getting pissed at me, right? And he's like, yes, that's why. Like, I wouldn't have you if I wouldn't have asked if I didn't want this. I go, all right, well, let me tell you what I saw on film. I go, let me tell you what I saw on film and why I hate you. And he's like, really? And I go, because you'll run it 3 times at 2 yards a carry, and you'll throw your hands in the air, and you'll go, oh, we can't run it. And I go, but you'll let that crappy-ass quarterback you have throw 7 straight incompletions and not even think twice about it.
Right. I hate
that. I hate that. And he started laughing, and he's like, all right, I'm guilty. And I go, until you embrace the run game, until you embrace what a 2-yard nasty-ass run where guys are licking their wounds and scraping themselves up off the turf, until you can embrace that and understand how valuable that is and what that does for us in pass protection and what that does for us in the play-action game, until you actually start to understand what that does for an offense, you will never run the ball because you'll look for every excuse not to do it. And it irritates me. It pisses me off because you guys don't understand it, because every rule is bent toward throwing the ball, and every rule is bent towards paying wide receivers who, like, every time a wide receiver complains about not getting the ball, you know what my solution, and this is why I'm not coaching. You know what my solution would be? My solution would be on Thursday, you come down to the O-line, D-line drills, and you take every rep of one-on-ones. And we line a defensive lineman, D-tackle up against you, and you have to get your ass kicked for 15 minutes trying to block the guy so that you have a better appreciation what other people have to do for you to catch a football. And maybe then you'll quit your bitching, because that's the issue.
Oh, you guys are simpatico. Ray is loving this, Mark. He's just smiling here. By the way, quickly before we let you go, obviously we talk a lot about the quarterbacks, and this past week we saw Geno go down. He throws a red zone interception. It's his fourth of the season, sixth in the past 2 seasons, which apparently leads the NFL. So that creates more angst for the Geno haters out here. Sam Howell comes in, and it's pretty dreadful. So there's people are feeling like, all right, well, what's the answer for the Geno haters? They feel like, well, just go get another quarterback. He's not the guy. Go get your guy. Well, I'm like, okay, well, who is that guy? You know, are there quarterbacks out there that you're aware of that are backups or on a roster that you feel like, you know what, if Seattle wanted to switch quarterbacks, this would be somebody they should look at? Because just from our point of view, I'm going, well, who are you going to get that's going to be better than Geno right now? Even if you're a Geno hater, you're not feeling like Sam Howell's that guy. Who is it?
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's a dearth of quarterbacks who can play in this league, and there's a lot of guys that get drafted, early that can't play. And, ultimately it's really interesting. I was on Sam Darnold all year before before anybody knew to play, because of the rehab process he went through in San Francisco. And I had their last 2 games of the year. I had San Francisco in back-to-back games, and ended up sitting with Sam Darnold because he ended up being a starter, and then, talking to him on the field for 20 minutes both games, and then talking to him in a meeting, and then talking to Kyle Shanahan in depth about the journey that he went on. And he's on this kind of rehab tour. And it's kind of what Baker Mayfield went through in Carolina, and then with the Rams, and then his first year in Tampa. And so, sometimes it takes a long time for those guys to develop, but they've got to be in a kind of a progression offense where they're really getting coached. And unfortunately, not all the coaching staffs are built the same or have the same capability of coaching a guy. So and my answer, that's a long-winded answer of saying you guys are screwed.
Oh, perfect. That's